So this just happened today. Against my better judgment at the beginning of the month, I got a Tinder. I matched with a few guys. One of them is named James. We ended up texting each other, and he seemed pretty chill and pretty into me. He's a decent looking guy, and we seemed to click. He had apparently been in a relatively abusive relationship with a woman, and he was looking to start over. According to him, she hit him with a frying pan and pepper sprayed him once. He kept going on about how crazy she was. Alright, I mean it happens. We went out to the movies this past Friday, and I had a great time. We ended up talking for a few hours, and we hit it off pretty well. I asked him about his ex just because I was a bit curious as to why he'd stay with somebody like that. He didn't say anything positive about her. Just that she was crazy, had mental illnesses, and didn't take her meds, that kind of stuff. She tried to baby trap him too, but she had a miscarriage. He expressed relief that she didn't end up with a kid. He said he had felt obligated to her. Again, I get that. All in all, we had a good time. This morning rolls around, and he tells me that he had hooked up with his ex last night and that he was going to try and work things out with her. It was mildly insulting that I lost out to an abusive chick, but whatever, I tell him it's cool. Then, a few hours later, he texted me saying that she was crazy and he thought she was changing but she wasn't, blah blah blah. He kept asking if he could see me. He was being very pushy about wanting to see me today. He begged for 5 minutes of my time so he could explain it to me. I politely told him that I didn't want to be involved with somebody who was still clearly hung up about his ex. This is where it got nuts. He admitted that he still was hung up about her, but that he wanted to see me today, so that I could meet her and she could determine if I was better for him than she was, and that she wanted him to be happy because he and I had a connection. I flipped after that. I told him that the fact that he needed his ex to determine who was right for him was absolutely nuts, and that's not what love is. And then I wanted no part of this. His ex starts texting me after that, and it was non-stop insults and incoherent shit that didn't even make any sense. She also dropped the bomb that she was his wife. I told her to fuck off and blocked the number. I went on Tinder to message him, where I called him a piece of shit and that if he was intelligent he should leave her and never message me again. He started to harass me, saying that I was miserable because they had a beautiful love together and all this shit. He then went on to say that my wife knows where you work. I hope she doesn't do anything rash. And I told him that if that was a threat, I would gladly go to the police. He then said that she'd been in jail before and she's not afraid. And that she loves him so much she'd fuck anybody up and risk jail for him. That she'd kill my friends if they tried to protect me. And that she's armed and dangerous. I told him goodbye, reported him, and deleted my Tinder account. I did go to the police tonight, but since it wasn't a direct threat, they can't really do much. The cop thinks James is just full of shit and just trying to scare me, since some people love getting off to that kind of shit. The cop said I did the right thing by blocking him and reporting him, and said I should just keep my eyes open and alert the people on my job. Scary thing is, James seems perfectly normal, but he lied about being married, how he felt towards his wife, and then he flipped like a switch. His excuse for not being upfront about being married was that they were going to get a divorce. He seemed so docile and unassuming, and the hatred and aggressive attitude were insane. I have to honestly wonder what would have happened if I'd gone to talk for 5 minutes with him. I'm kinda concerned since they do know where I work, but if either of them try anything, then the cops can actually nail them. What a weekend. When I was growing up, I would always have friends come over and we would play outside in my front yard. Cars would only drive by maybe once an hour, so a lot of the time we would play in the street. I lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. It was quiet and consisted of 90% old people, so my mom was never worried about us being outside alone. But that eventually changed. It all started when I was 10. I had invited a few of my friends over to hang out. They were all in sports, so they decided they were going to kick around a soccer ball in the street. Well, I probably played with my cat. I was bored, so I started looking around and I noticed my neighbor. I'll refer to him as Creepy Steve. Across the street was outside sitting in his garage. This was normal to me though, because ever since I was little he would sit out there in front of a small TV for most of the day. This time was different though. I started looking closer and realized that Creepy Steve had binoculars up to his face. Strange, I thought. The only thing in front of his garage that he could see was my house. No birds or animals that were interesting enough to watch. I turned to my friends and pointed it out, and they agreed it was strange. But we shrugged it off and continued to play. A little while later, I glanced into Creepy Steve's garage again. This time, he had a camera pointing at me. I started to freak out. He then noticed all of us talking about him, and he went inside. A few minutes later, we see that his front door is open and someone has a camera held up to the glass. We still continue playing in the road, freaking out a bit, but we don't care enough to go inside. Eventually, he comes back outside, but this time he comes out of the garage. He grabs a small bench from his porch and starts walking towards us. He sets down the bench at the edge of his yard a few feet away from us. Out of curiosity of what he was going to do next, we continued chatting and playing. Why we didn't run away, I don't know. He starts mumbling things and my friends ignore him, but I can't help but listen closely. He starts saying things about our appearance. Through his mumbles I hear, "So beautiful, gorgeous." But then, I clearly heard him say, "I want to lick your pussy." I was young, but I knew what that meant, and I was so done being near this man. So I went inside and told my mom. She was obviously shocked and disgusted and went to do something about it. Coincidentally, the guy living right next to the creep is a cop, so she goes out there and tells him the story. The cop shows up to Creepy Steve's house and talks to him, and the lady that lives with him. The cops couldn't really do anything because they had no proof he actually did these things. The lady living in the house claims that he's a friend and that she's letting him live with her. Also, that she had no idea he was acting like this and was going to tell him to leave. We also find out that his name was Steve, hence the name Creepy Steve. So Creepy Steve leaves that night. My family is relieved for a few days, but then he comes back. My mom was hesitant in letting me go outside after that. She would watch me and my friends through the window every time we were out there playing. He didn't do anything else for a while. One day, a few months later, my friends and I were laying in my front yard talking and looking at the stars. Then, Creepy Steve's window opens. He's naked. He stands there for a minute as we freak out because our innocent eyes have never seen anything like that before. He then closes the window. I didn't tell my mom about that incident. Creepy Steve didn't do anything after that until about 7 years later. In July of last year, my friend and I arrived to my house around 10 p.m. after going on one of our summer driving adventures. She planned on staying the night, so she parked at the bottom of my yard. We sat in her car talking and laughing pretty loudly about our lives, friend drama, etc., with the windows down. What we didn't know is that Crazy Steve had his windows open and could hear us. Crazy Steve just recently started a thing where he liked to blast music so loud that the entire neighborhood could hear it. It was pretty annoying when you could hear music all the way inside your bedroom at night, but no one ever complained. Anyway, we start to hear music playing from his house. I remember thinking, what the hell does he listen to? That sounds like cheesy porn music. My friend is dying laughing because of how strange this music is. Then I start hearing moaning. Yep, I was right. It starts quietly and you really had to listen to hear it. But then he turned it up. Now porn is playing loud enough for every surrounding house to hear. My friend and I are crying laughing, but at the same time terrified because we knew that he heard us. So we are now sitting in her car hearing, "Yes, Daddy," and excessive gagging noises as we sit there in silence trying to comprehend what the fuck was going on. I started filming it and sending it to all my friends because that shit is pretty funny. But then it stops. After this, we see a figure walk across the room in front of the glass door. He's naked, again, and he knows we can see him. He stands there for God knows how long. We're freaking out and don't know what to do, so I text my dad to come outside and save us. I get no response. Eventually, I have her drive me up to the garage to let me inside, and she speeds off. I tried to tell my parents again, but they didn't care since nothing was fixed last time. So later that night, at about 2 a.m., my friend who moved to another state decided to show up at my house. I sat outside with him and told him about the whole thing. At the time, his friend was in the back seat of the car eating Wendy's. Then, at 2 a.m., Creepy Steve and his lady friend leave at the front door to walk their dog around the neighborhood. They leave their front door open and unlocked. So, the Wendy's kid decides to run up, open the door, and throw his fries all over their living room. Not exactly the revenge I wanted on Creepy Steve, but it was still pretty funny regardless. Shortly after that, we moved away, and I haven't seen him since. So yeah, Creepy Steve, let's not meet. I'm a supervisor of the 24/7 emergency hotline operated by a non-profit, which focuses on assisting local women within our city limits who have just experienced domestic violence within the last 72 hours and are now in emergency situations. As the supervisor, I authorize all cabs, lock changes, and place people in shelters or hotels depending on what the hotline workers determine somebody might need. My two co-supervisors and I are the only people who authorize to meet with people outside of the organization's regular walk-in business hours. We go to police stations, hospitals, and the like to meet with victims and provide them with temporary assistance. We, and our bosses higher up, are also the only people in the organization authorized to contact the police. If a client needs police or wants to file a report and wants us to do it, the hotline worker they're speaking to has to go through to a supervisor, and we have to dispatch 911 or the local police precinct directly. Until I get dispatched, I work remotely from my home, because I typically work both nights and days during the same week. It allows me the opportunity to sleep at night, unless I'm called by a hotline worker or dispatched, which is necessary for the nature of the work. Because of this, I have a satellite/internet phone in my apartment that can connect into a hotline worker's extension. They use it to phone me for help when there's someone who pulls a "I need to speak to the manager" kind of thing, so I can connect to the call, stuff like that. I also have my cell phone available, but staff typically only use it for emergencies or when I'm out on dispatch. I've been here for about 5 years and have never had anything too crazy happen. Sure, people are murdered. Someone was assaulted with an air conditioner one time. There was a lady who was 28 and had 11 kids. But outside of things that are just generally depressing, there's never been anything outside of this incident that's truly rattled me this much. It was approximately noon on a Monday, but it was a holiday, so the office was closed except for the hotline, which works non-stop 365 days a year. I was walking home from 7-Eleven with gummy bears and a Slurpee when the hotline called my cell phone. It was Alex, a longtime worker who honestly is probably old enough to be my mom, and she sounded panicked. She straight up told me to get the fuck home ASAP and dial into her extension, that it was a legit emergency, that she was going to keep this woman on the phone as long as she could. If it was anyone else other than a hotline veteran, or honestly Alex, I probably would have been like, yeah, whatever, welcome to the job, so what's going on here? But Alex is a badass boss lady with a neck tattoo who once almost got sexually assaulted, but didn't because she kicked the dude in the nuts and asked him who the fuck he thought he was. Anyways, so I've never heard her sound like this before. I didn't ask any questions, I just freaked out and literally ran the 2 blocks home and then up the stairs to my apartment. I picked up the phone, chugged some Slurpee so I wouldn't sound horribly out of breath, and dialed into the extension Alex specified. Hello, my name is Nicole. I'm the supervisor today. How can I help you? I just heard static and screaming on the other end of the line. Not like an angry client with a cheap phone on a subway, but someone being tortured type of screaming, and I had no idea at first what the static was. I was so taken aback I didn't even immediately process what exactly was going on, but I realized she was saying, "You need to help," over and over in various wordings, and the static was wind. It was not windy outside, and this lady was breathing heavily, so she was either having a panic attack or she was running. "Okay, ma'am, I'd like to help you. Where are you right now?" I said through my inner fear, which I had become a pro at hiding on the phone. I decided to also bypass the typical questions of, do you feel safe, what's going on today, etc. Clearly some shit was going down, and we needed to help this lady escape whatever and get to a police station. I'm not even going to bullshit a quote because I was internally shitting myself so badly. But she said she was in Biloxi, Mississippi, running through a park she didn't know. Nothing looked familiar, and she had been in the back of a work van, and she didn't know what was happening or where she was. For reference, we're in New York City, and the phone she had called from was the local area code. I wasted no time conferencing in 911. Wasted no time. Alex was silent, and I kept trying to talk to the woman while the phone rang on the call, and we waited for the dispatcher. I asked her what she was wearing. She said jeans and a black t-shirt and a pink coat. She said her name was Lizzie and she was 23. She didn't seem lucid though, and I asked her questions about what day it was, and she was off by about a month. I asked her about landmarks, trying to figure out where she was. All she could tell me again was a park and a highway, and the last street she remembers was named after some sort of a nut. Pecan? Peanut? Macadamia? Alex jumped in and we started listing types of nuts, and it got weird. Turns out she said it was walnut. We had no idea where that was. We didn't know if it was in New York City, Mississippi. We didn't even know what was going on. She kept saying she needed us to come get her and she didn't have time. She said she was going to be murdered, but when we tried to ask more about, like, who, what, where, when, with was going to murder her, she didn't respond and just kept saying she needed help. I would have sent a cab for her in a heartbeat, but once again, I had no idea where to send it. The 911 dispatcher who answered flipped out and said she was brand new. She put us on hold and said she was going to get somebody. Cool, thanks bitch, appreciated. Alex started trying Google Maps to try and find the place in and around Biloxi, and I went looking around the city for it. We clearly did not find it with that limited amount of information, and in that short of a time, a 911 dispatcher finally connected and tried to speak with her, but they didn't get anywhere either. Alex ultimately told the woman from 911 to shut the fuck up because we didn't have time to get her up to speed, and she was asking things we already had asked, and there wasn't time to waste like that. We heard one loud, piercing scream, a thud that sounded oddly crunchy, and the line cut out. I sat there. Alex sat there. The 911 dispatcher sat there. It was the definition of an awkward silence. Long story short, we never found out what was going on, who it was, or where they were. Alex said before I got on the line that Lizzie said she was being chased, or escaped from somewhere and thought someone was chasing her, and that she was running. The 911 dispatcher said they couldn't trace the phone because we're the ones who called, so the satellite pinged off as originally from where my apartment was, and she was definitely not in my neighborhood. When we connected with police, all they could tell us about the originating number was that it was a disposable phone and not registered to anyone. I have a lot of experience on the hotline, and I've learned to trust my gut about people and situations. I got bad vibes off of whatever this was, and it was in no way a fake call. Our number isn't listed publicly, so you can't Google it. You have to be referred to us by core service agencies such as Child and Family Services, Department of Health, the hospital, the police, etc. So we rarely ever got prank calls, and we've never gotten a sicko trying to fake something like this. The worst we've ever gotten since I've been here is homeless people sometimes trying to get to the shelter. Alex and I both swear whatever it was real, and it still doesn't sit right with either of us.